Vikir, a hound known for his unwavering loyalty to his father and family, found himself facing grave injustice despite his reputation. He was falsely framed and charged with associating with the Demon Clan, a crime he did not commit. The consequences were dire as he was sentenced to face the guillotine. At the guillotine, Vikir decided that if given a second chance after catching the rabbit, he would never live as a hound again. As the baby grappled with the heaviness of his new body and the overwhelming noise of his surroundings, he had a startling realization. He had been reincarnated, and to him, this strange world felt like a hellish existence. He found himself in the grand state of the Baskerville family, under the watchful eye of its patriarch, Hugo Lee Baskerville. Hugo's disdain for the gathered children was evident as he harshly referred to them as insignificant brats, expressing disappointment at the lack of special individuals among them and labeling them as mere trash. However, amidst this disdain, Hugo's attention was drawn to the reincarnated child who seemed unusually quiet. Vikir, the child in question, recognized Hugo Lee as the very culprit responsible for his unjust framing and execution in his previous life. It became clear to Vikir that he had regressed to infancy and was faced with Hugo's younger form. In the depths of his infantile consciousness, Vikir recollected the harsh memories of his past life. As a hound, born into an illegitimate family, he had endured rigorous training in a rough environment, and the responsibility of a hound to be devoted to his mission. These included carrying out missions ranging from assassinations to gathering intelligence, executing ambushes, and even engaging in menacing activities. All of these unsavory tasks were designed to upgrade the Baskerville family's status above the other 7 families. Vikir's loyalty to the family and Hugo had been unwavering throughout his previous life, fueled by a simple desire. He yearned for recognition and acknowledgement from those he served. However, despite his years of dedicated service, a decade after humanity's victorious battle against the demons following the opening of the gate to the demonic realm, Vikir's reward had been nothing short of a death sentence. The reason behind his execution was brutally straightforward. The hound knew too much. In his newborn body, filled with a burning desire for revenge, Vikir realized that his best chance at becoming strong lay in seizing the opportunity presented by the Cradle of Swords. To gain the strength he needed, he had to endure the trials that awaited him. For children born into the Baskerville family, a mandatory trial awaited, navigating a maze of swords and then reaching the Styx River to undergo an examination of their talents. The Styx River, legendary for turning the bodies of children into iron, held great power but could affect only a limited number of children. Vikir understood that he needed to reach the Styx River first and monopolize its blessing for as long as possible. As he entered the Styx River, Vikir felt the water seeping deep into his body and bones, a sensation that reminded him of the significance of a strong start. He knew he had to endure the pain, no matter how painful it became. Outside the river, the guards and even Hugo Lee Baskerville himself grew concerned, urging him to come out before it was too late. Hugo questioned his butler, Barrymore, about the time Vikir had spent submerged, learning that around 7 minutes had passed. Amused by the child's determination, Hugo ordered him to surface, thinking it impossible for Vikir to remain underwater much longer. However, Vikir remained resolute, determined to absorb as much of the Styx River's power as possible. He fought through the pain and continued to endure. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his leg, and he was pulled out of the river by Hugo, who was surprised to find Vikir had not only been in the river but had also consumed some of its water and had grown teeth. Hugo inquired about the child's name, learning that he was Vikir van Baskerville. In a whispered tone, Hugo found amusement in the fact that a very greedy son had been born. In Vikir's mind, a sinister resolve took hold. He knew that he had to bide his time, sharpen his cunning, and prepare for the moment when he could exact his revenge. When the time comes, he will rip his master head off and the Baskerville family will disappear into history by his hands. Vikir van Baskerville was born as the bastard son of Hugo Le Baskerville, a renowned nobleman of his time. At the tender age of 8, it was apparent that Vikir possessed an extraordinary intelligence that far surpassed his peers. However, within the Baskerville family, he was considered nothing but ordinary, as he did not possess the direct lineage of the family's prominent bloodline. As Vikir grew older, he began to explore different fields of interest, eventually settling on the treacherous paths of assassination, espionage, and conquest. By the time he had reached the age of 20, he had already embarked. But despite his achievements, Vikir still felt inadequate in comparison to those of direct lineage. At the age of 30, the gate leading to the demonic realm had opened, signaling the beginning of a terrifying invasion by the demon clans. Vikir, now a seasoned warrior, stepped up to defend his realm, engaging in battles that saw him slaughter monsters left and right. For the next 5 years, Vikir endured through the era of destruction, fighting tirelessly. And when the long war finally came to an end, it was the humans who emerged victorious. For his unwavering loyalty and bravery, Vikir was rewarded by the kingdom. Instead of being praised and celebrated for his efforts, he was met with defamatory accusations and false allegations. These unfounded claims led to Vikir's eventual execution by the guillotine's blade. Vikir sat up on his bed, realizing that he was in a nursery. He looked around and came to the realization that he had successfully absorbed the Styx River. This was a major achievement, and he knew that he now had a better starting point in life than before. Suddenly, he heard the door open and a maid entered the room. The maid seemed surprised and murmured to herself, saying why Madam had asked to place this sort of thing on the bed of the young Master Vikir. Vikir was surprised to hear the maid refer to Madam, as he never expected anyone in the Baskerville family to give him, a bastard, a present. The maid left after placing a box in Vikir's bed. As Vikir saw the box opening, he was shocked to see 2 bloody mambas coming out of it. He wondered if Madam had sent them to assassinate him. Vikir knew that there were only a few people in the Baskerville family who would be referred to as Madam, and whoever it was, she was probably trying to reduce competition. As the mambas hissed at Vikir, he realized that they could kill all of the babies in the nursery. However, Vikir caught both the mambas with his bare hands. Filled with hatred, he thought that he would bring the entire Baskerville family down with his own 2 hands. The next day, the people of Baskerville were shocked to find the child sleeping peacefully next to the dead vipers. All the nannies who had been on shift that night were executed after torture, but the reason for the viper's appearance remained unknown. Only the young hound Vikir knew the truth. 8 years later, Vikir was back in class, listening to his teacher discuss the levels of swordsmanship. The teacher explained that if one cannot yet imbue their sword with mana, they are considered a sword beginner. The next level is the sword expert, where one can infuse the blade with a little bit of mana. When the blade emits mana in liquid-like aura form, it is called sword graduator. Lastly, the level at which the aura is solid and the form can freely be changed is called Swordmaster, which is the highest level of swordsmanship. Upon hearing that Sir Hugo, the strongest of the Baskervilles, was a Swordmaster, all the students present exclaimed in surprise and astonishment. However, Vikir was lost in thought and felt the need to regain the power he had prior to his regression before the coming-of-age ceremony. The teacher noticed Vikir's distracted state and thought highly of him, knowing that he had earned a strong physique by diving in the Styx River for 7 minutes. The teacher believed that Vikir was much more talented than the other students and that the patriarch would be very happy to know about his progress. As Vikir was lost in thought about how many years he needed to kill Hugo, he didn't notice the triplets giving him an evil look after class. After class was over, they pushed him and started mocking him, calling him a garbage van, and talked about the rumors about him diving in the Styx River and strangling 2 vipers to death when he was just a baby. Vikir recognized the triplets as the ones who had stabbed him in the past when he was running away after the defamation. They were known as Hugo le Baskerville's Trident, and their names were Highborough le Baskerville, Middleborough le Baskerville, and Lowborough le Baskerville, all 9 years old. The triplets continued to taunt Vikir, telling him to stop lying, and that they didn't like him. Vikir thought to himself that they were going to be a real pain in the ass in just 10 years and that it might be a good idea to put them in their place now. As Vikir, one of them brandished a knife and taunted him with a rumor he had heard, that if you stayed in the Styx River for long enough, your body would become like steel and you would be injury from blades. The other 2 triplets eagerly echoed their agreement, while the third gave the order for one of the others to hold Vikir still, covered his mouth with one hand, and said, "I'll eat my hand if he can endure this for 3 minutes." Vikir was not afraid, and even played along with this cruel game for a moment. The triplets attempted to harm him with the knife. 1 minute passed, 3 minutes passed, 10 minutes passed, but Vikir remained unscathed, and the triplets began to realize that the legend they had heard was true. As the triplet holding Vikir released him, he noticed blood on his hand. Vikir then spat out the triplet's finger from his mouth. The triplet was shocked and asked Vikir what he was doing. With an evil smile on his face, Vikir reminded the triplet of his promise to eat his own hand. Meanwhile, the other 2 triplets were trying to calm down the situation and suggested that they go to a priest to put the finger back. But Vikir was not interested in that and instead asked to let them go. The triplet then attacked Vikir with a knife, calling him a bastard and reminding him that they were a year older than him. Vikir did not dodge the attack and allowed the knife to stick into him, but to the triplet's surprise, it could. Vikir twisted the triplet's hand and reminded them that they had forgotten that they were dealing with a Baskerville where power and talent overcomes age. With an evil look on his face, Vikir suggested that they continue playing until the end. Vikir twisted the triplet's hands mercilessly, causing him to cry out in pain. He declared in a low, menacing voice that they were in Baskerville, where age doesn't matter as long as you have. The triplets, terrified, looked at each other in shock. Vikir suddenly punched the triplets, knocking him to the ground, while the other two watched in disbelief. The third triplet attacked Vikir in a fit of anger. The room fell silent as the triplets lay there, battered and broken. Vikir stood over them, looking cold and unfeeling. He then told the triplets that they would get better with treatment, but he also made it clear that he wouldn't let them leave the room and they would have to live with the discomfort of their own bodies. However, he would be generous and allow one of them to leave. Vikir picked up a knife and threw it in front of the triplets, telling them that they would have to decide for themselves who would leave the room. He then started to leave, but not before turning back and issuing a taunting remark saying that he can't wait long, so decide quickly. Least one of you should live, right? The triplets looked at the knife and then at each other. They began to fight, each trying to grab the knife and gain the upper hand. The sounds of their struggle echoed. He had successfully caused the Triton of Baskerville to split, pitting brother against brother in a fight for survival. In the Patriarch's office, the head butler, John Barrymore, delivered some unsettling news to the Baskerville clan patriarch, Hugo Le Baskerville. The Morgue clan had been causing trouble in the Ruby Mines, claiming it as their territory. However, Patriarch Hugo assured John that they would handle the matter when the Morgue clan reached out to them. Evaluation of the juvenile fortress and informed the Patriarch that Master Vikir had scored the highest on the written exam, vacated the premises in preparation. However, John hesitated before informing the Patriarch of a recent incident at the juvenile fortress. John informed the Patriarch that there had been a big fight amongst the young masters at the fortress. Patriarch Hugo was concerned and asked how many of them had died. Butler John informed Hugo that there were no casualties, but Master Highborough's teeth had been completely damaged, Master Middle Leborow's jaw had been smashed in, and Master Loborow's left index finger had been amputated. Seemed significant. Patriarch Hugo was taken aback and remarked that they wouldn't have. John then revealed that there was some friction with another young master, an 8-year-old named Master Vikir, who had wounded the 3 young masters and who also had the highest scores on the written exam. Summoned Vikir to his office. Vikir arrived with a smile on his face and Patriarch Hugo. Patriarch Hugo then brought up the issue of Vikir disabling the 9-year-old triplets in his senior class. Vikir responded that, however, Patriarch Hugo pointed out that he was not talking about physical disabilities, but the disability of the heart. Explained how the incident had torn the brothers' relationship apart and asked Vikir if he thought what he did was wrong. Did he do wrong? Patriarch Hugo pointed out that he had turned his brothers into a total mess. Vikir, with a confident look in his crimson eyes, replied that he was stronger, and how could the stronger person be wrong? He still didn't feel an ounce of guilt. Vikir seemed surprised by this news and asked if they forgave me. Vikir suddenly recalled a memory before his regression of a family that was ruined by the Baskerville clan came to pay Hugo a visit. She had become a nun after many years and she forgave Hugo despite his clan being responsible for the ruin of her family. Vikir repeated the same line that Hugo had said to the nun, that forgiveness is excuse made by the weak who cannot seek revenge due to their lack of strength. Glowing with agreement, he then turned to the head butler, Barrymore, and instructed him to own. Vikir expressed his gratitude by requesting chocolates, as Vikir was leaving with head, and not to lose to the direct descendants. Vikir acknowledged the advice but his face was filled with hatred. Vikir and head butler made their way to the storage room to inform him about the chocolate the Morgue clan had obtained with much difficulty and that it was enjoyed by their gourmands. However, Vikir quickly interrupted him and stated that he didn't want anything that was processed. Vikir then requested cacao beans, ones that had a rich aroma. Complied and had the beans brought to Vikir. As Vikir put one of the beans in his mouth, the chef informed him that they were the bloody beans known for their rich aroma and that with just one bean, he could produce 100 liters of chocolate. The head butler watched as Vikir ate the bitter bean and thought to himself that Vikir must really love chocolate to eat something so bitter on its own. processed, he would have a huge amount of chocolate available. The chef asked Vikir if he wanted them to process the beans and send them to his room, but Vikir declined and said he would take them as is. Vikir had no interest in eating the chocolate, but he had a plan for the cacao beans. Use the beans in the upcoming practical exam in 5 days. Little did they know, a catastrophic event would soon occur, unlike anything that had ever happened before in the Baskerville clan's history. In this world, the Baskerville family is known as the Berserker family due to the intense training and evaluation that their children undergo from a young age. Children are able to take their first steps, and they are immediately put through a rigorous test of their stamina. They must run up a steep mountain and are not allowed to lie down or rest on their stomachs except for allocated times. Sleep. They are required to sleep alongside a monster corpse. These extreme practices are what make the Baskerville family feared and respected throughout the land. After this period of grueling training, the children reach the age of 8, and the real test begins. Hounds, as they are called, must undergo a deadly evaluation. This is the defining moment that has earned the Baskerville family its notorious reputation. Now, on the outskirts of the territory, there is a mountain known as the Le Rouge et Le Noir Mountain. It is filled with monsters, and it is here that the young hounds gather to undergo their evaluation. The instructor of the Baskerville family, Shadow Dog Pavlov van Baskerville, stood before the young masters and explained the rules of the test. They needed to survive for a month in the area and hunt large and strong monsters. He went on to explain that the points for being successful in surviving were 10 points, and if the young masters survived without becoming disabled, it was 30 points. If they failed other young masters and survived, it was 50 points. If they defeated a monster and survived, and if they fulfilled all the above conditions, they would receive 90 points. Pavlov also told the young masters that if they stole the badge that was given to them from someone else, additional points would be given. However, if they died, they would. He emphasized that there were no 100 points and reminded them of Sir Hugo's lesson that a swordsman dies the moment they become arrogant. The instructor also cautioned against leaving the designated area, as Le Rouge et Le Noir Mountain was a restricted area with many undiscovered things. He recommended that the young masters move within the given space where the monsters had already been subjugated. He informed them that during the exam, shadow dogs would be hiding and grading them. As the young masters waited for the start of the practical exam, some of them noticed Vikir and began discussing his past feats. Despite their comments, Vikir remained composed of the exam. As soon as the bell rang, all the young masters started running towards different parts of the mountain to occupy advantageous areas. Thought about going to a place he had seen in the last year's exam, hoping to gain an edge, with the intention of taking it from him themselves, each wanting to do things their own way and come out on top. Pavlov observed as the exam began, knowing that it was important to keep casualties to a minimum. Although killing was not prohibited, it was discouraged, and any contestant who did kill would have points deducted. Pavlov and the other shadow dogs were determined to do their best to prevent any unnecessary deaths. Vikir was surprised to see him heading towards a restricted area. He wondered where Vikir was going and if he was the rumored genius who had distinguished himself since. The shadow dog was intrigued and looked forward to seeing the skills Vikir would display. Vikir approached a large tree and wondered if this was the right spot. The soft ground would be suitable for him to set up camp for a while other participants were busy fighting each other for points or facing monsters. Vikir gathered wood and practiced with a wooden stick. Later on, he slept peacefully under the tree. The shadow dog who had been watching Vikir grew impatient and started to question his actions. He wondered how long it had been since Vikir had taken a break and observed that he spent most of his time digging holes, hunting for food, or collecting equipment. The shadow dog started to doubt the rumors about Vikir's supposed genius, wondering if he was planning on hiding instead of actively participating in the exam. At last, the shadow dog decided to leave and find something interesting elsewhere. As soon as the shadow dog left, Vikir's face lit up with a smile. Vikir recalled a conversation with his group mate about using cacao beans to make fish smell. Finally gone, and he had finished all his preparations. He wondered if he should start his hunt. Now, a few days later, Vikir entered the restricted area and recognized it from his scouting days. As he was roaming around, he noticed a burning smell and burnt tree roots. He knew that the habitat of the monster he was looking for was around there. Suddenly, he spotted burning stool and realized that he had found it. There was only one monster around there that produced that kind of dropping, a hellhound. The hellhound stood in front of Vikir with flame erupting from its mouth, swallowed the hellfires of the oil world, the Hellhound. The beast was known to be one of the most dangerous monsters in the land, and Vikir had barely survived his encounter with one when he was just 18 years old in his past life. Now, as an 8-year-old, Vikir knew that it would be impossible for him to defeat the Hellhound alone, but he remembered a way to take on the beast that even a child could manage. As the Hellhound lunged towards him, Vikir quickly dodged to the side. Remembering the first weakness of hellhounds, they could only move in straight lines. They found it difficult to suddenly change directions. Vikir quickly dropped some water on the ground, and as the hellhound charged towards him, he shouted out the second weakness of lookout monsters. They were unable to cross water. Because of the water Vikir dropped, the hellhound took a longer route to reach Vikir, giving him more time to dodge. Vikir knew that even a shallow depth of water could slow them down significantly, exposing the weakness common to all canine monsters, opening their mouth while running. Vikir found himself in another life-threatening situation as the bloodthirsty hellhound attacked him. But Vikir was prepared, and he threw a bloody bean into the monster's mouth. Vikir explained that chocolate was poison. It was obvious what it would do to a canine monster like the hellhound. He drew his sword and aimed for the hellhound's weak spot where the ribs were not present, the kidney. With a swift and decisive strike, Vikir pierced the hellhound's kidney, killing it easily. As he absorbed the energy called XP or karma from the defeated monster, Vikir felt his body getting stronger. He swung his sword and felt it becoming lighter, knowing that he was catching up to where he was before his regression before he even reached the age of 15. Vikir couldn't help but wonder what kind of expression Hugo would make when he brought back a monster. With a risk rating of B+ as an 8-year-old child, Vikir stood there ready to take the head of the hellhound he had just defeated, feeling confident in his abilities. He knew he had already secured first place in the practical test and was eager to claim his reward, something he never would have dreamed of in his past life. But his moment of triumph was short-lived as a group of hellhounds approached him, likely seeking revenge for their fallen comrade. Vikir remained calm and collected, already knowing the weaknesses of these creatures and how to defeat them. As the hellhounds drew nearer, Vikir took out his sword and prepared to take them on. He had plenty of bloody beans left and was ready to use them to his advantage. With a smirk on his face, he cut the dead hellhound's head and taunted the hellhounds, knowing they were no match for his skills and knowledge. He had already defeated one of their kind and was prepared to take them all down. The hellhound suddenly started whimpering, which immediately caught Vikir's attention. He couldn't believe that the fierce beasts were feeling scared of a mere 8-year-old's bloodthirst. Hellhounds would never submit to their prey even if they were to die, Vikir thought to himself, trying to figure out what could have caused the hellhounds to feel so uneasy. As Vikir turned around, he saw a monstrous creature with 3 heads standing before him. It was a Cerberus, the legendary 3-headed dog from Greek mythology. The creature was massive, measuring at least 7 meters in size, and Vikir knew that a Cerberus had a risk rating of A+. Vikir was bewildered as to what a Cerberus, which typically inhabited the 7th ridge of the La Rouge-et-Le-Noir mountain, was doing here. The Cerberus was known as the ultimate lookout monster, residing in a place where all the dead spirits were headed. Vikir noticed that the Cerberus was bleeding and had multiple arrows stuck in its body. He realized that someone might have been hunting it, and it had come all the way to this place being chased. This was his chance to kill an injured A+ rank monster, and he decided to attack the Cerberus. Despite the Cerberus being a powerful and dangerous creature, Vikir had been hiding his true abilities as a sword expert and had already reached a high level of expertise. His body had been strengthened by the river Styx, and all the weapons he possessed were working well against the injured Cerberus. With his refined swordsmanship, which he had developed through wars with the demon clans, he successfully landed some hits on the Cerberus. Vikir thought that he could do it, as an injured Cerberus was doable. Vikir's attack on the Cerberus seemed to be working, and he thought he had a chance of defeating the injured A+ rank monster. However, in a moment of carelessness, Vikir let his guard down, allowing the Cerberus to strike back with its claws. The first attack broke Vikir's sword, and the second sent him flying through the air. The force of the Cerberus's attack sent Vikir hurtling towards a tree trunk. With a sickening thud, he smashed into the tree trunk, and blood poured from his mouth. The impact had clearly caused a serious injury, and Vikir lay still, his body broken and unmoving. Vikir's eyes opened slowly, and a surge of panic rushed through him as he remembered the direct attack of the Cerberus and felt a sharp pain in his left arm. He wondered if the beast had ripped his arm off in the attack, but when he looked down, he saw that it was still attached to his body with some injuries. Vikir was relieved that the Cerberus was wounded and had not managed to sever his arm completely. He thought about the river Styx and how its magical properties might have played a role in protecting him from the beast's full force. He felt grateful for its protection but knew he couldn't rely on it completely. His relief was short-lived, however, as he quickly realized that the damage was still significant. He knew he wouldn't be able to take another hit from the Cerberus, and so he dodged as the beast attacked him once again. As an experienced hunter, he knew that he had to find the best way out of situations like this. The best possible decision right now was to run, with his tail tucked between his legs. As he ran, Vikir's mind raced with thoughts of survival. Thea knew that he had to find a way out of this situation, and fast. His eyes darted around, looking for an escape route. That's when he saw it, an iron fence just a few yards away. Vikir's heart leaped with hope. He knew that if he could get past that fence, he would be out of the restricted area and closer to safety. He pushed himself harder, running with all his might. With a burst of adrenaline, Vikir pushed himself through the gate, his heart pounding with relief. He had made it out of the restricted area, but he knew that he was not out of danger yet. He had to reach that place, the safe haven he had prepared for himself before embarking on this dangerous mission. As he ran, he searched for something in the woods nearby, his heart racing with the fear of being caught by the hellhound. Finally, he spotted what he was looking for, a pit he had prepared beforehand. He jumped forward, narrowly avoiding Cerberus's jaws, and the hellhound fell into the pit full of wooden spears. Vikir couldn't help but smile to himself, knowing that he had prepared well for this battle. He had smeared the wooden spears with the bloody bean essence that acted as poison for the cannid monsters. Cerberus growled and foam started oozing from its mouth, but Vikir remained focused and prepared for the next phase of the battle. He knew that Cerberus was a high-ranking demon and that this fight would be one of the toughest of his life. Vikir prepared a wooden spear and he threw it at Cerberus, hitting the hellhound's side. But the Cerberus was still alive and walking towards him, ready to attack. Vikir counted the hellhound's steps as it approached him, one by one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. As soon as Cerberus took the 7th step, it stopped abruptly, falling to the ground right in front of Vikir. Vikir let out a sigh of relief, realizing that the rumors were true. The wooden spear he had just thrown was not like the others. It was a spear laced with the venomous fang of the deadly bloody mamba snake that prevented its victim from walking more than 7 steps once they were bitten. Vikir had hidden it away when he was younger, knowing that it could come in handy one day. The energy emanating from Cerberus' body entered Vikir as he stood over the 3 lifeless heads of the beast. He marveled at the power he now possessed, but his mind quickly turned to the concern of how he was going to transport the massive body back. He knew that the cause of the Cerberus's death would be obvious to anyone who saw it, and he began to consider who might be his witness. Perhaps the guardian knight who had seen him carving the wooden spears could be of help. But then, Vikir's thoughts turned to something else entirely. The Cerberus was a gatekeeper, which meant that it was guarding something. A dungeon, most likely, that could be nearby. Vikir's heart quickened at the thought of the treasure that might be hidden within. He knew that dungeons were often the lairs of powerful monsters. Vikir was determined to explore the dungeon, but before going there he took a handful of Cerberus feces and applied it to his body. Vikir knew that by doing this, he could avoid any small monsters that might be lurking in his path. Vikir's keen senses were on full display as he tracked the steps of the Cerberus through the forest. He noted the dried soil, the rotten leaves, and the moist roots following the trail with a single-minded focus. As he backtracked the path, his eyes widened in recognition. This was the dungeon that the Cerberus had been guarding, and Vikir realized that he had been here before. He knew that this dungeon would be discovered in another 10 years, but he was certain that it would be completely empty by then. Right now, however, he could feel the mana beneath the rotten surface. Vikir cautiously approached the dungeon. He looked around, but he didn't see any light, and he realized that the dungeon must be deeper than he initially thought. But Vikir was undaunted. His crimson eyes glowed with excitement as he stepped inside the dungeon. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of treasures were waiting for him inside. If you like this video and you want a second part, comment below with the word part 2. Also subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell and like the video. But most important, leave a comment. Until the next video.